Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Security Guard Command. Today I'm going to share a situation that happened to me and how I could have done a better job. So I work in a hospital, and I am posted at the emergency room entrance in the lobby. My job is to greet people as they come in, find out if they're here to visit a patient or if they're there to check in as a patient. And I also monitor a tracking app for Lyft and Uber rides for patients. Make sure that they get in their cars, do a lot of different duties at this job post. And I also answer phone calls, and most of the time these phone calls come from staff, and they're calls for assistance where security is needed, what have you. I also do a lot of calling in to make sure that a visitor is cleared to go into a certain area of the emergency room. So it's quite a busy post. One night, not too long ago, I got a call from a nurse for assistance with a combative patient. So I responded to the area that the patient was in, made contact with the patient, and it started off where the patient was refusing to wear his mask. The mask is required inside of the hospital, and he was refusing to put on his mask. As soon as he saw me approaching, he pulled his mask back up, and as I was making contact with the patient, the nurse tells me that this particular subject had slapped the nurse when the nurse was attempting to check his wristband for identification in the process of discharging this patient. And what they do is there's a little barcode on the wristband. They have to scan the wristband. Brings up the patient's information, and then they enter all the final vital check information and just make sure that everything's done before they discharge. And this patient slapped the nurse when the nurse was attempting to check the wristband. And so I told the subject, I said, "Sir, we have a zero tolerance policy on behavior when it comes to assaultive behavior, whether it's verbal or physical." And I told him, "You're about to be discharged. Avoid that behavior," essentially. And as I was about to walk away, the patient goes, "The nurse is an F&B," and I was like, I turned around and said, "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" And the nurse heard it as well, and the nurse says, "Okay, he's got to go. He's already discharged. He can go." So I said, "Let's go, sir. You're done. Let's go." And he stood up. He starts posturing towards me. He's getting very hostile towards me at this point. I say, "Sir, just go outside. There's the door. Walk out." So he's walking out. I'm behind him a couple steps, trying to keep my distance so he can't turn around and reach me at all. And I'm following him out the door, and he continues to stop and turn around and posture at me. Finally, we get to the main doors. The doors slide open. He walks out, and I say, "Sir, you need to leave the property right now." And as I'm going out, following behind him, all of a sudden, I hear the subject is going to the right, towards the street, and all of a sudden, to my left, I hear, "Hey, don't touch my brother," in a very aggressive tone. And at this point, I was like, "Oh, crap." I basically walked into a situation where this subject now had backup, and this emboldened him. He stopped, he turned around, and he squared off with me, and he had his fist clenched. He was ready to strike. And so I immediately grabbed my radio. I backed up a couple steps, reassessed situation, and I called for immediate officer assistance in the emergency room lobby entrance. And At this point, I just reiterated, sir, I need you to leave the property. And I told the other person, sir, he needs to leave the property. He's being trespassed. And the subject began to go toward the street. So I moved toward the street as well, mindful of the person in the other side of me. At this point, my backup arrived. I was halfway down to the street, and backup arrived, and they started to come towards me as well. And that's when I stopped, let him continue to leave. Another guard arrived, and I gave the description of the subject, said the subject needs to leave. And I came back towards my emergency room lobby, told my supervisor that there are two subjects. One of them is behind us, and the other one is on the street at this point. So one guard is now making sure that he leaves the property, and myself and the supervisor are now directing our attention towards the guy who was apparently, supposedly the brother of this. So they're both transients, they're both homeless, and apparently now transients are using the buddy system. So then they consider it family, which is fine. Probably a good idea for them. They buddy up, and they have what they have brothers now, and they protect each other. They look out for each other. This other guy went to retrieve the two bikes that they had locked up at the bike rack, because apparently they came in on bikes. So that was fine. He could get the bikes and said, get your bikes, but you got to leave the property. And the second subject cooled down. Now that he saw that there were numerous security in the area, he cooled down, he got his bikes, and he left the property without any further incident. But the takeaway from this, guys, and the thing that I could have done better, was to not lose sight of my peripheral during the situation. I kind of went into a little bit of a tunnel vision, where my focus was on this hostile subject in front of me and getting him off the property. And in doing so, I ended up losing sight of my peripherals, and the fact that once I went through that transitional space into the outside, there were multiple subjects outside, and one of them just happened to be related to the subject that I'm removing from the property, and he also became defensive when he saw what was going on. So now I had not one subject but two subjects, and the new subject that came into the picture was an unknown. He was outside, unknown if he had any weapons, unknown if how aggressive he was going to become. The situation could have turned very bad and not in my favor. And so with that being said, I could have approached everything quite differently, and this is what I would have done differently, or what I would do differently now going forward. You know, and what really brought this up, and what really reminded me of this situation, was Sean's video from the Security and Investigations Leadership channel on friendly fire for armed security, and he talked about different situations where, you know, you go into a transitional space, and this transitional space may contain some unknown aspects to it. Could have some hostiles in that area. He talked about the deadly funnel, you know, with a doorway and in various angles of approach, regarding crossfire, what have you. And this really got me thinking about that situation that I went through. And this is what I would have done differently, looking back on it, and, you know, in hindsight, having 2020. Avoid that tunnel vision. Recognize when the tunnel vision happens and shake yourself out of it. Remember to reassess your scene constantly. I went into this tunnel vision. I made the mistake of assuming that this was the only threat at the moment. And once I hit that transitional space into the outside, the variables changed, and it was not for the better. And so constantly remind yourself to check your surroundings. Even when you are focused on a particular subject, you have to constantly reassess your surroundings. That's just situational awareness, which in my case, my situational awareness ended up I ended up losing my situational awareness in the situation. And something else could have happened as well. As I was following this guy and still looking over my shoulder, one of my supervisor came out the same doors that I came out of. Unbeknownst to them, but there was an additional subject involved who was still near the door. So looking back on this, it would have been prudent for me to get on the radio and specify there are multiple subjects. One is near the entrance doors and the other one is heading down the sidewalk. That would have been a good heads up to my other officer. They were not aware of the additional subject until I came back toward the doors and informed my supervisor that there are 2 subjects. One of them is heading toward the bike rack. That could have been bad for my supervisor had they been surprised by the second person. The other thing that, looking back on, that it kind of turned into a little bit of a hectic situation with multiple subjects on 2 different ends of the sidewalk. Once my other officer was ensuring that the guy was leaving the property, I started coming back towards my supervisor to inform them of the second subject, and that's when I realized that the other officer was now left alone with the first subject, who was actually the combative one. So a lot of confusion happened, and I think that in this case the communication could have been better, and that's really where I think I would have really improved, aside from the getting into tunnel vision, is the communication with my other officers and informing them via radio that there are 2 subjects. That way they are aware going into it to be aware of additional subjects, and it's not just the person that I am escorting off the property. So in this case here, not necessarily friendly fire or crossfire, but just the fact that the variables changed so rapidly, and I could have communicated the situation a lot better over the radio, just so that when they arrive, they are aware that there are multiple subjects and that they can be a little more alert. So that's that, guys. If you work with other security guards at your site, communication is key. And guys, just remember, if you start to go into tunnel vision, snap yourself out of it and constantly reassess your surroundings. That's all I got for today, guys. Just want to share this story. This is a learning experience for me. Even though I've been doing security for 17 years now, it is a constant learning experience. You never know it all. This industry is constantly changing and evolving, and so this is a learning experience. And the next time something like this happens, hopefully I will be a little better prepared, and we can avoid the risk that this situation posed. Anyway, have a great day, guys. Stay safe.